If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been laughed at, pushed aside, or made to feel small, then stay right here, because today's story isn't just history. It's about turning humiliation into legacy and pain into power. Smash that like button, subscribe, and prepare yourself for one of the coldest, most calculated revenge stories of all time. The humiliation. They didn't just defeat my city, they humiliated it. They stripped it of power. They demanded tribute. They cut away land that had been ours for generations. And worst of all, they laughed while they did it. To Rome, my people, Carthage, weren't rivals. We were a warning, a reminder of what happens when you stand in their way. As a child, I watched Roman banners flutter where our own once flew. I heard Roman generals stroll through conquered streets, talking about us like we were a lesson, not a people. Each time they said the word Carthage, it dripped with contempt. And inside me, something began to boil. Not rage. Not yet. Something colder. A promise. The weapon, while Rome celebrated, while senators congratulated each other and bathed in glory, I trained. I learned their tactics, their psychology, their arrogance. They believed themselves invincible. That was their greatest weakness and my greatest weapon. Years passed. Then came my chance. From the very frontiers of civilization, I gathered an army, warriors hardened by frost, deserts, hunger, and loss, men who had nothing left to protect except their vengeance. The impossible feat. Together, we did the unthinkable. We crossed the Alps, massive mountains of ice that Rome believed were impenetrable. Soldiers died, animals fell, fingers froze, and lungs burned. Every breath was agony. But with each step, my resolve grew stronger. Rome will feel this, I whispered to myself as cold air slashed my lungs. They will feel every wound they ever gave us. And when we came down from those mountains, the world changed. The storm, battle after battle after battle. Rome sent its best. And I destroyed them at Trebia, at Lake Trasimene, and finally, Cannae. Cannae wasn't just a victory. It was humiliation. Rome sent tens of thousands of men. Proud, armored, confident. I let them surround me, and then I closed the trap. Steel. Screams. Dust. Blood. The Roman army was swallowed whole. Senators wept. Mothers howled. A civilization lost its breath in one single afternoon. The quiet strategy. You would think that would be enough. But revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, calculated, and Rome refused to surrender. Instead, they went for my home. While I stood at their gates, dreaming of final victory, they sent forces behind me, straight for Carthage. They burned fields, poisoned alliances, turned brothers against brothers, and once again, the streets of my childhood filled with strangers speaking the language of power. It was happening again. The same pain, the same sinking feeling, the world collapsing where I'd been born. Except this time, I wasn't a child. This time, I chose strategy over rage. The final move, I returned home not as a triumphant hero, but as a politician. Rome thought I had been broken, but behind closed doors, I rebuilt everything they tried to destroy. I stabilized the economy. I strengthened defenses. I cut corruption. I made Carthage stronger without lifting a sword. And that terrified Rome more than war ever had. Because an enemy with nothing to lose is dangerous. But an enemy who has learned patience? That's deadly. Rome accused me of plotting, of treachery, of daring to rise again. So I left. Exile. A wanderer in foreign lands, helping enemies that Rome didn't even realize they had yet. And with each whisper of advice, each strategy passed like a secret. I could feel it. Rome was cracking from the inside. Their paranoia, their greed, their endless hunger for dominance. They were devouring themselves. My revenge was no longer about swords. It was about time. Years later, when Roman generals argued over who deserved power, when citizens rioted for bread, when the Republic trembled beneath its own weight, I smiled. Because they didn't need an enemy anymore. They'd become one to themselves. They never captured me. They never paraded me. They never forced me to kneel. Instead, they watched their perfect empire become exactly what they feared. Broken not by an army, but by arrogance And as I stood in quiet exile, hearing news of their internal chaos, I felt something that surprised me. Not triumph, not joy, but peace. Because they finally understood. You don't destroy a people and walk away untouched. You don't take everything from someone and escape consequences. Rome thought they had erased me, but they spent generations haunted by the shadow I left behind. That was my revenge. Maybe the most powerful revenge isn't violence. Maybe it's resilience. Maybe it's becoming so strong, so unstoppable, that the people who tried to break you spend their entire lives watching you rise higher than they ever imagined. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button. Comment below. What's the most satisfying revenge story you've ever heard? And if you want more intense, emotionally driven stories like this, subscribe now, because the next one might be even sweeter.